Okay, guys. New approach here. Trying to record stuff as soon as I have the idea. Whoa! Sorry. Um, and post it. Just schedule it for later if I need to for pacing purposes. And I'm being a little quiet here, and we're in a hotel because we took kind of an impromptu trip. Just really tried a lot of different positions to try to make this bright window and the darkness in the room be better. This is what I got so far. And I'm being quiet. Sorry for the unusual lower volume because everybody else is napping. Um, so, Palindrome Paladin, he is a viewer of mine. He has commented a few times in some of my more recent videos, recent in air quotes. Um, and so he does have some videos. He hasn't been posting, it seems like, for a long time, or at least in a public state. Um, and it looks like the most recent things he posted were actual plays. But he had one a while back on player entitlement, and he was talking about um, how certain players respond to PC death, even in the face of making bad decisions and stuff like that. But that's not actually really what I want to talk about, though. Quick commentary on that. I think it does have something to do with tone. There are a lot of people who play games for power fantasy. Um, wow, I could. And So I think that's really more about the tone and like the themes of the games kind of needing to be better aligned and communicated between GMs and players. And I really like what he had to say in that video. This is not really a response video as much as it is a topic inspired by video. So at one point he mentions that, hey, we're all sitting there together telling a story. That's really what we're doing. And I've never been a fan of exactly that wording. I do use a wording similar to that when I'm trying to introduce role playing or explain it to complete noobs who don't know anything about role playing other than like, oh yeah, I've heard of Dungeons and Dragons. Other than that, um, and if you've watched any of my many of my videos, you know I'm picky about words. I'm picky about word usage and whatnot. Um, I think storytelling and writing a story are a couple different phrases that lean specifically towards one side of the hobby, and it is represented by games, maybe such as Fate. Uh, Margaret Weiss's system. What was that? Gosh, I'm forgetting it. Right now. Dang it. I played it once in the Marvel game that was written by her in a convention. Um, Cortex Plus. That's what it is. Cortex Plus. And I don't know how similar in this aspect Cortex period is similar to Cortex Plus. Um, there are systems that, because they have such a focus on story, that they have mechanics that control the flow of tension, right? Another good one, for example, is Dread, with its use of the Jenga tower, even though they can't use the word Jenga, obviously, where any important decision, a player has to pull something out, and when the tower falls, that player is removed in one way or another from the story. But when they rebuild that tower, they build it with less pieces in, right? Like they build it and then they immediately take a certain number of pieces out, and that number is more and more as the as the tower falls through play, right? And that's obviously to represent that you start from low tension and you build up to tension to a certain point, and then it falls. But when something happens, the rebuilding of the tower tells the players that, well, now your chance of successfully pulling out a log is greater, right? So tension falls, but it doesn't fall all the way to the same point. It doesn't fall to the bottom because we also start with some logs out, and so your nervousness is the same all the way. It starts higher, right? And then the next time it falls, but because you pull even more blocks out, it doesn't fall. It doesn't even fall to where the first rebuild started, right? So you have mechanics like that. Um, Whereas when you don't have that mechanic, what you're doing is you can still say that you're building a story, that a story will be told through your choices, the dice results, the mechanics of the game, and stuff like that. Um, and now I realize that I didn't stop to think about this before I started recording the video. But what is that verbiage, right? There should be a slightly different verbiage or an inclusion of a completely different description or whatever to tell someone that we're not moderating how this is being built. We're not trying to obtain an appropriate rise and fall of tensions or this or that, right? Like the most we're doing is that there are risks, and depending on the kind of story, there's a certain, and tone of the story, there's a certain degree of risk, right? Something that's more fatal might be greater risk, and something that's right. Like I'm thinking, I'm almost thinking. I don't have the movie memorized, but I'm like if you consider like the risk that's inherent in say Conan versus the risk that's inherent in MCU, right? There's almost no risk in MCU if you're an important character until the big climax. Then maybe some people die. And so there's, but the point being that it's more like a real life story. You might have just like areas in the story where just stuff is happening, big stuff is happening constantly, and troubles and successes and whatnot, and other parts that are just humdrum life that just keeps going on. Not that an adventurer's life is humdrum, right? But like, okay, we went into another dungeon, or we helped another town, or whatever, and we had some risk and we had some reward. Nothing super awesome, nothing super devastating, right? It's a more even keel, and you don't know how that's going to go. That's not a crafted story, and maybe that's the word we need to use. Whether or not it's crafted, right, or managed or curated. An uncurated, an unmanaged, an unedited story, right? An imperfect story flow is what we do when we're just letting player actions and GM actions and dice. I'm moving my hand over here off screen. Tell the story without an assistant that doesn't have tension management mechanics. Anyways, just a thought. They both tell stories, but they're stories of completely different natures, right? All right, just a thought on that. Later.